Have you ever wondered what ancient people believed long before modern science? Before there were textbooks, telescopes, or technology, people looked to the stars, the sun, the river, and even death itself, searching for meaning. Nowhere is this more fascinating than in ancient Egypt, a civilization that flourished over 3,000 years, filled with pyramids, pharaohs, and gods unlike anything you've ever imagined. For the Egyptians, gods were everywhere. In the sky, in the soil, in the River Nile, and even inside the tombs of the dead. They didn't just worship these gods, they built temples for them, offered food to them, and told stories about them that shaped how they lived and how they died. Some gods were kind, others were terrifying, but all of them had power. And today, we're going to uncover the 5 most powerful gods in all of ancient Egypt, who ruled the sky, who guarded the dead, who brought the sun across the sky each day, and fought darkness each night. From the sun god Ra to the jackal-headed Anubis, from Osiris, lord of the underworld, to the magical Isis and the falcon warrior Horus, these divine beings shaped not just a religion, but an entire civilization. So grab your scrolls, open your mind, and step with me into a world of myth, magic, and mystery. This is ancient Egypt, and these are its gods. The religion of ancient Egypt was unlike anything we know today. It was polytheistic, meaning the Egyptians believed in many gods, each with their own powers, personalities, and responsibilities. These gods weren't just figures of myth, they were part of everyday life. Farmers prayed to gods for good harvests, soldiers prayed for victory in battle. Mothers prayed for protection and safe childbirth. Even the pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, was believed to be part god himself. Temples were not places for public worship like churches today. They were sacred homes for the gods, carefully maintained by priests. Rituals, music, and offerings were performed daily to keep balance in the universe, a concept the Egyptians called ma'at, order, truth, and harmony. And at the center of it all were the gods, powerful, mysterious beings that shaped the sun, the sky, life, death, and everything in between. In the grand mythology of ancient Egypt, few gods hold as much power, reverence, and cosmic importance as Ra, the sun god. Known as the creator of all life, Ra was not just a deity to the ancient Egyptians. He was the very force of existence, the bringer of light, warmth, and order to a world constantly threatened by darkness and chaos. Depicted with the body of a man and the head of a falcon crowned with a glowing sun disk, Ra was a constant presence in the sky. Every morning, Egyptians would look to the rising sun and see not just a star, but their god, beginning his daily journey. The ancient Egyptians believed that Ra rode across the sky each day in a grand solar bark, a divine boat made of gold, illuminating the world below as he traveled from east to west. But his journey didn't end with the sunset. As darkness fell, Ra entered the underworld, known as the Duat. Here, he faced the most dangerous part of his voyage, the nightly battle against Apophis, the serpent god of chaos. Apophis, enormous and coiled in eternal hatred, sought to stop Ra's boat to prevent the sun from rising again. Every night, Ra had to fight this terrifying monster, armed with spells, protective gods, and his own divine light. If Ra ever failed in this nightly war, the sun would never rise, and the world would be plunged into eternal darkness. This cosmic struggle between Ra and Apophis wasn't just a myth, it symbolized the Egyptian worldview. The sun rising every morning was proof that order, Ma'at, had triumphed once more over chaos, Isfet. This belief wasn't just spiritual, it was practical. Egyptians structured their entire society around the idea of balance, routine, and divine harmony. Every day, the success of Ra's journey reaffirmed that life, time, and the universe were continuing as they should. In some temples, priests performed rituals at dawn to assist Ra in his journey, casting protective spells against Apophis. The survival of the world, they believed, was a team effort. God and humans together keeping darkness at bay. Ra wasn't just a god in the sky, he was deeply connected to the rulers of Egypt. The pharaoh, the most powerful person in Egypt, was believed to be the son of Ra, chosen to rule by divine authority. This connection gave the pharaoh not only political power, but also religious legitimacy. When a pharaoh gave orders, it was understood as Ra's will being carried out on earth. During certain dynasties, kings even added Ra into their throne names, like Rameses, meaning born of Ra. Great temples were built to honor him, especially the one at Heliopolis, one of the most important religious centers in all of ancient Egypt. There, obelisks were raised to catch the light of the rising sun, symbolizing the connection between earth and heaven. The symbol of the sun disk is Ra's most recognizable sign. Often encircled by a cobra, this disk was worn by other gods to show his influence, and was carved into temple walls, statues, and tombs. People worshipped Ra not just in grand temples, but also in their daily lives. Farmers prayed to him for sunlight on their crops. Travelers looked to him for guidance during the day. Even death was connected to Ra, as the soul would follow him on his nightly journey through the Duat. In some versions of mythology, Ra combined with other gods over time, such as Amun-Ra, a fusion of Ra and Amun, god of air and hidden things, showing how powerful and central he was to Egyptian religion. According to creation myths, Ra was the first being to emerge from the waters of chaos. He created the world by speaking it into existence, naming things, the sky, the earth, the gods, and bringing them to life with his words. From his tears came humanity, and from his children came the rest of the divine pantheon, gods like Shu, air, Tefnut, moisture, Geb, earth, and Nut, sky. Thus, Ra was not only the sun god, but the ultimate source, the origin of all existence. Even as dynasties changed and new gods rose to prominence, Ra remained at the center of Egyptian spirituality. His light touched every corner of Egyptian life, from the Nile to the afterlife. Today, more than 4,000 years later, his image still appears in ancient tombs, pyramids, and on the stone walls of long-abandoned temples. He wasn't just the sun. He was the sun made sacred, a god of fire, power, protection, and eternal renewal. As the solar boat disappears into the underworld and the stars begin to shine, we move now from light to death. Our next god stands at the threshold between the living and the dead, watching over tombs, weighing souls, and guarding the path beyond. Join us as we meet Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the afterlife. Long before Osiris ruled the underworld, there was another god who stood at the threshold between life and death, Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian of the afterlife. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end, but the beginning of a dangerous journey. And Anubis was their protector on that path. With the sleek black head of a jackal, Anubis was a familiar figure in every tomb, every burial ritual, and every soul's final judgment. He watched over the dead, preserved their bodies, and guided them through the darkness of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. Jackals were scavengers, often seen prowling around cemeteries and tombs. To the Egyptians, this connection made the jackal a sacred animal, one that could protect the dead from desecration. Anubis's black color symbolized rebirth and fertility, not evil. It was the color of the Nile's rich soil, where life begins again. So when people saw Anubis carved into tomb walls or painted onto coffins, they saw not a threat, but a guide, a protector in the darkest hour. One of Anubis's most important roles was as the god of embalming. It was believed that he taught humans the sacred rituals of preserving the body after death. In fact, according to one legend, Anubis embalmed Osiris himself after he was killed by Set. Ever since, priests who performed mummification wore jackal masks in Anubis's honor. They worked carefully to clean, wrap, and preserve the body so that the soul could recognize it in the afterlife. To ancient Egyptians, keeping the body whole was essential. Without it, the spirit would be lost forever. That's why the work of Anubis was so sacred. He helped souls return home. Perhaps the most iconic role of Anubis is in the ritual known as the weighing of the heart. After death, the soul would be led to the Hall of Two Truths. There, Anubis would place the person's heart on one side of a great scale. On the other side, he placed the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth, balance, and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was pure and allowed to enter the field of reeds, a paradise. But if the heart was heavy with sin and lies, it was thrown to Ammit, a fearsome beast part lion, crocodile, and hippo, who devoured the soul completely. Anubis stood silently by, not judging, but ensuring the process was fair. Anubis was worshipped all across Egypt, but especially in cities with large necropolises, such as Sinopolis, the city of the dog. Tombs often had statues of Anubis lying down, guarding the burial chamber. Amulets in the shape of his head were worn by the living and buried with the dead. These charms were believed to protect the soul and ensure a safe passage. Even in chaotic times, people found comfort in Anubis. a steady guardian of order in the uncertain realm of death. In early mythology, Anubis was considered the son of Ra. Later, as Osiris became the ruler of the underworld, Anubis's role shifted, and he was seen as the son of Osiris and Nephthys, the shadowy sister of Isis. Some stories tell of Nephthys hiding her baby, Anubis, in the desert, and Isis discovering him and raising him as her own. This connection gave Anubis a complex background, tied to gods of life, death, and magic. But no matter his origin, Anubis remained loyal to his purpose, protecting the dead and punishing those who disturbed the graves. Though worship of Anubis faded with the rise of other gods and the decline of ancient Egypt, his image lived on. Today, Anubis appears in modern movies, video games, and books, often as a symbol of mystery, magic, and death. But behind the dark mask lies a god who represented compassion, order, and guidance. He did not cause death. He cared for those who had died. He did not punish the wicked, but simply revealed the truth. As the soul passes judgment and moves toward eternity, we turn our gaze to the next figure in the divine story. A god once killed, then reborn, the ruler of the underworld and the symbol of resurrection. Join us as we descend deeper into the duat and meet Osiris, the king of the afterlife. In the shadowy realm of the dead, there sits a god unlike any other. A king who once ruled the land of the living, was betrayed, murdered, and then returned, not as a conqueror, but as a symbol of resurrection. His name is Osiris, and to the ancient Egyptians, he was the eternal promise that death is not the end. Long before Osiris became the ruler of the underworld, he was believed to have been Egypt's first king, a wise and just ruler who brought civilization, law, and agriculture to the people. Under his reign, Egypt thrived. Fields were fertile, trade blossomed, and peace reigned. He taught the people how to farm the land, how to worship the gods, and how to live in harmony with the natural world. Osiris was not just a god, he was the ideal king, beloved by the gods and the people alike. But peace rarely lasts in mythology. Jealous of Osiris's power and popularity, his brother Set, the god of chaos and violence, hatched a cruel plan. In one of the most famous myths of ancient Egypt, Set tricked Osiris into stepping into a beautiful coffin made to fit him perfectly. As soon as Osiris lay down, Set slammed the lid shut, sealed it with lead, and threw it into the Nile. Osiris died, and with him, the Golden Age ended. But Osiris was not forgotten. His wife, the powerful goddess Isis, searched the entire land to find his body. After a long journey filled with danger and magic, Isis recovered Osiris's coffin and hid it in the marshes. But Set found it again. In a fury, Set tore Osiris's body into 14 pieces and scattered them across Egypt. Undeterred, Isis, with help from her sister Nephthys and the god Anubis, recovered each piece. Using powerful spells, she reassembled Osiris's body and performed the first act of mummification, giving birth to this sacred ritual. Through her love and magic, Isis brought Osiris back to life, not in the world of the living, but as the king of the dead. Now reborn, Osiris took his place in the duat, the Egyptian underworld. There he ruled not as a dark god of doom, but as a just and merciful judge. He presided over the weighing of the heart, where souls were judged for their deeds in life. Osiris sat on his throne, surrounded by 42 divine judges. If the heart was pure, the soul would join Osiris in the field of reeds, a paradise of green fields, fresh water, and eternal peace. If not, the soul would face annihilation. But Osiris did not punish, he simply kept the balance. Osiris was more than a god of death, he was the god of rebirth. Every year, the Nile flooded its banks, bringing dark, fertile soil to the land. A cycle the Egyptians believed symbolized Osiris's death and return. His body had been scattered across Egypt, and from those places sprang temples, tombs, and rituals. Farmers saw Osiris in the rising crops. Priests saw him in the sacred rites. He was a reminder that life comes again, that no matter how dark the night, dawn will follow. Through his union with Isis, Osiris fathered Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship and war. After Osiris's death, Isis raised Horus in secret until he was strong enough to challenge Set and reclaim the throne of Egypt. In this way, the story of Osiris is not just about death, but about the transfer of power, the continuity of order, and the rightful rule of the pharaoh. Every king of Egypt was seen as the living Horus, and every dead king became one with Osiris. The cult of Osiris was one of the most widespread and important in ancient Egypt. His most sacred site was Abydos, where pilgrims traveled for centuries to honor his death and resurrection. Festivals reenacted his myth, the mourning of Isis, the battle with Set, the return of Horus. Statues of Osiris showed him wrapped like a mummy, holding the crook and flail, symbols of rulership, and wearing the Atef crown, a tall white crown flanked by ostrich feathers. To believe in Osiris was to believe that life continued after death, not as a ghost, but as something glorious and eternal. Osiris reminds us that even in the silence of the grave, there is the whisper of life, that even betrayal, violence, and loss cannot stop the cycle of renewal. To the ancient Egyptians, Osiris was the promise of peace, the reward for righteousness, and the hope that love and life never truly end. But while Osiris ruled in stillness, his sun soared through the skies with vengeance in his heart. Our journey continues with Horus, the falcon god, warrior of light, and defender of the throne of Egypt. With the roar of wind and the slash of wings, a great falcon soars across the skies of Egypt. His eyes shine like twin suns, forever watching over the kingdom below. He is Horus, god of the sky, war, and kingship. And to the Egyptians, he was the eternal symbol of power, justice, and victory. Horus was born in secret. After the murder of his father Osiris, his mother Isis fled to the marshes of the Nile Delta, hiding from Set, the god of chaos. There, under the protection of magic and the spirits of the land, she gave birth to Horus the Younger, a child of prophecy and destiny. He was raised in silence, far from palaces and temples, trained not as a prince, but as a warrior. Because one day he would face his father's killer and reclaim the throne of Egypt. When Horus came of age, he challenged Set in a divine court, demanding the throne that rightfully belonged to Osiris's son. What followed was not a simple trial, but a cosmic war that lasted 80 years, filled with battles, trickery, and trials from the gods. In one myth, Set gouged out Horus's eye during a brutal fight. But the eye was healed by Thoth, the god of wisdom, and became known as the Eye of Horus, a powerful symbol of healing, protection, and royal power. The battle was not just physical, but spiritual. It was order versus chaos, inheritance versus usurpation, justice versus violence. And in the end, Horus triumphed. The gods crowned him king, and he became the rightful ruler of both the living world and divine law. The story of Horus's wounded and restored eye became one of the most important symbols in all of ancient Egypt. Called the Wedjot, the Eye of Horus was worn as an amulet by soldiers, sailors, children, and kings. It protected against evil, disease, and misfortune. The eye also represented balance, vision not just of sight, but of insight. One eye could see the world, the other, the soul. Every pharaoh of Egypt was believed to be the living Horus. When a pharaoh ruled, he did so with the spirit and authority of Horus. When he died, he became one with Osiris, and his heir took the Horus name Anu. This eternal cycle of rule, death, and rebirth wasn't just royal tradition. It was divine order. That's why Horus appeared on temple walls, crowns, statues, and royal names. His falcon form soared above thrones and guarded the borders of the kingdom. Horus wasn't just a warrior. As god of the sky, his left eye was the moon, and his right eye was the sun. His body stretched across the heavens, his wings casting shade across the desert, his gaze tracking every corner of the earth. He watched the pharaoh, watched the Nile, watched the stars, ensuring that Ma'at, the sacred balance, was preserved. One of the grandest temples in all Egypt was dedicated to Horus at Edfu, a massive complex where priests reenacted his battles with Set each year. In the rituals, Horus was praised not only as a god, but as a hero, the protector of justice and avenger of wrongs. Statues of Horus often show him as a proud falcon, standing upright or seated beside pharaohs, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Sometimes he is shown as a man with a falcon's head, strong, unyielding, regal. Horus is more than myth. He represents the eternal fight for what is right, the courage to stand against evil, the strength to claim your destiny. He teaches that power must be earned, not seized, that leadership comes with vision, and justice requires sacrifice. And so the image of the falcon, wings spread, eyes bright, crowned with kingship, lives on, carved into stone, painted on tombs, and remembered for over 4,000 years. But Horus did not stand alone. Behind him stood his mother, powerful, wise, and filled with ancient magic, a goddess of healing, love, and sorcery. In our next story, we meet the enchantress who defied death and shaped destiny, Isis, the great mother of gods. In the heart of the ancient world, where gods and mortals walked side by side, there was one goddess who stood above all, not because of strength or war, but because of love, wisdom, and unshakable will. Her name was Isis, and she was more than a queen. She was a wife, a mother, a healer, a protector, and a sorceress whose magic could overcome even death itself. Isis, in Egyptian known as Aset, was the daughter of the sky goddess Nut and the earth god Geb. She was the sister and beloved wife of Osiris, and together they ruled the world in peace and harmony. But her story is not one of peace. It is one of grief, power, and resurrection. When Osiris was murdered by his brother Set, Isis began her long journey, one of the most powerful myths in Egyptian history. Set had sealed Osiris in a coffin and cast him into the Nile. But Isis, armed with only her love and her unrivaled magic, searched endlessly across the land and sea. She wept, she called upon the spirits, she followed the whispers of nature. Finally, she found the coffin buried beneath a tamarisk tree in a distant land. She brought it home, only for Set to find it again and tear Osiris's body into 14 pieces, scattering them across Egypt. Yet Isis did not give up. With her sister Nephthys, she traveled the length of the Nile, collecting every piece. Each part she found, she mourned, and with ancient spells, she reassembled him, body and soul. Isis was no ordinary goddess. She was the mistress of magic, with knowledge that surpassed even the oldest gods. In one myth, she outwitted the sun god Ra himself, learning his secret name and gaining divine power by using her cunning and spellcraft. With words alone, she could heal wounds, cure poisons, and bend fate. That's why mortals called on her in every prayer, for protection, for childbirth, for love, for guidance. In temples across Egypt, women and men alike whispered to Isis when they needed strength beyond the mortal world. After reviving Osiris, Isis conceived a child, Horus, the future king of gods and men. But Set still ruled the land, and the life of her son was in danger. So Isis hid with the infant Horus in the marshes of the Nile Delta. There, she raised him in secret, using her magic to heal him from scorpion bites, diseases, and spirits. She became the ultimate image of motherhood, fierce, protective, nurturing. It was her teaching and love that prepared Horus to one day defeat Set and restore divine order to Egypt. Isis was not a distant goddess of the stars. She walked among the people. She understood pain, loss, and fear. She wept as they wept, and so they loved her as no other. In every home, her image was carved into amulets and painted on walls. Priests called on her for healing. Women prayed to her for fertility. Sailors invoked her name for protection on the river. She became known as She of 10,000 Names, for she could take many forms and answer every kind of need. Isis's worship was so powerful that it spread far beyond Egypt. Her temples rose in Nubia, in Greece, in Rome, even as far as Britain. The Temple of Philae, on an island in the Nile, became one of her most sacred sites. Pilgrims journeyed for miles to hear her hymns, see her statues, and feel her blessings. Even as the old gods faded, Isis remained, transformed into new names and faiths. Many believe she inspired later images of the Virgin Mary, the Madonna and Child. Her power endured across time, culture, and empire. Isis was not just a goddess of the past, she is the eternal heart of the Egyptian soul. Where there is love, where there is healing, where mothers protect their children, Isis is there. She teaches us that power does not always roar. Sometimes it weeps, heals, and waits. She is the one who stitched the world back together, the one who whispered life into the dead, the one who showed that even in ruin, we can begin again. And now, as Isis fades into the mist of myth, we turn our eyes to a darker force, a god born of sandstorms, chaos, and rage. In our next story, we meet Set, the god who shattered heaven and was never truly defeated. In every myth, there must be a villain. But in Egyptian mythology, the villain is never so simple. He is chaos, he is strength, he is the storm, he is Set, the god of deserts, war, storms, and disorder. Feared, hated, but also respected, Set is the necessary shadow in the story of light. Set was born to the sky goddess Nut and the earth god Geb, just like his siblings, Osiris, Isis, and Nephthys. But from the beginning, he was different. While Osiris represented fertility and order, Set was the god of dryness and destruction. He ruled the Red Land, the deserts beyond the Nile, where no crops grew, and where sandstorms howled like angry spirits. Set's animal form is mysterious, with long square ears, a curved snout, and a forked tail. It has no real-world match. To the Egyptians, it was a creature of pure chaos. The most infamous act of Set is known across all Egypt, the murder of his brother Osiris. Jealous of Osiris's rule, Set tricked him into entering a coffin made to his exact size. He sealed it shut, covered it in molten lead, and cast it into the Nile. When Isis recovered the body, Set found it again, this time cutting Osiris into 14 pieces and scattering them across Egypt. It was an act not only of murder, but of cosmic rebellion against order, against life itself. But Set's story does not end with villainy. In a surprising twist, Set was not always the enemy. On the solar bark, the divine boat of the sun god Ra, Set stood as a protector. Each night, Ra sailed through the underworld, attacked by the great serpent of chaos, Apep, Apophis. And each night, Set defended the sun, stabbing Apep with his spear, keeping darkness at bay. Without Set, the sun would never rise. This made him a paradox, a god of chaos who also guards against greater chaos. After Osiris's death, Set claimed the throne of Egypt. But Isis's son, Horus, grew up and challenged him. Their conflict became one of the longest and most dramatic in Egyptian mythology, filled with magical duels, shape-shifting, trickery, and legal disputes in the court of the gods. Set was cunning. Horus was brave. In some versions of the myth, the gods could not decide who should rule, and Ra himself hesitated. But in the end, Horus prevailed, and Set was exiled to the desert, a place that suited his wild nature. To the Egyptians, Set was never fully destroyed, and he was never purely evil. He was the necessary force of change, conflict, and defense. Farmers needed the black land of the Nile, Osiris. But they also needed to defend it from invaders, Set. He was the chaos that makes strength possible, the challenge that forges heroes, the wild wind that tests the tree. In this way, Set was part of Ma'at, the cosmic balance. Not order alone, but the tension between order and disorder. Though feared, Set had his own temples, especially in places close to the desert. In cities like Anubis, he was worshipped as a god of war and strength. Soldiers prayed to him before battle. Kings invoked his power when they needed to crush rebellion. Even pharaohs bore his name, like Seti I, who proudly honored the god of storms. Over time, however, Set's image grew darker. Foreign invaders like the Hyksos associated with him. And by the time of the New Kingdom, Set became a symbol of foreigners, evil, and betrayal. Set is the eternal outsider. He does not rule, but he challenges rulers. He does not create peace, but he tests its strength. He is the part of every story that pushes the hero to grow, the adversary that sharpens the sword. And though he was cast out, forgotten, and demonized, the Egyptians never fully erased him, because deep down they understood, without chaos, there is no balance. And in the winds of the desert, in the fury of battle, Set still lives, howling, laughing, waiting. Thus ends our journey through the gods of Egypt. From the radiant Ra to the loving Isis, from death's silence to war's roar, these ancient gods still whisper through stone and sand. In the myths they left behind, they speak not only of power, but of the eternal balance between light and shadow. Underneath the golden sands of Egypt, in the tombs of pharaohs and the walls of ruined temples, the gods still whisper. They speak of death and rebirth, of love, betrayal, justice, and chaos. They speak not only of ancient power, but of the very forces that shape all of us. Anubis, who guides us through darkness. Osiris, who teaches that life does not end with death. Horus, who reminds us to rise again and fight for what is right. Isis, who heals and weaves broken worlds back together. Set, who challenges us and strengthens us in the process. These are not just stories, these are reflections of the eternal balance between shadow and light. And though empires fall and the Nile flows on, the myths remain, written in stone, carried by sand, remembered in silence. Thank you for walking this ancient path with us. If this journey stirred something within you, a spark of wonder, or a question left unanswered, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel for more forgotten legends and sacred stories from the ancient world. Leave a comment below. Which god spoke to you most? Which myth surprised you? And until next time, walk with courage, seek the old truths, and remember, the gods are never as far away as they seem.